Okay, good morning, friends. We're going to get started. Welcome to this session. We will be hearing first from David Wiley and Seth Gurell. Another part of their team is not here today, Shelton. Shelton is an assistant professor at Utah State University in Instructional Sciences, and he is the director of Causal. So the other two members of their team will be David Wiley, who is an assistant professor in Instructional Psychology and Technology at Brigham University, and affectionately known as the grandfather of the Open Education Conference. Seth Gurell, among many other things that he has done, is the principal author of the OER Handbook, which many of you may be owners of. And following their portion, we'll also be hearing from Luetzelschwab, who is from Agilix. We'll be talking about how we can take the kinds of open content and open resources and then utilize them. So Seth and David.
Thank you. Thanks, John. So I want to talk today about OER Recommender. I don't want to spend a lot of time jabbering about it, but I want to give you a brief introduction, and then we'll do a lot of demoing, and then I'm going to turn the time over to David to talk about the future of the project. So first we have the history of OER Recommender. It was started in 2006. As I recall, it was announced at Open Ed in 2006. It was funded by the Mellon Foundation and NSF, and we appreciate both of their contributions because it just wouldn't have been possible without them. And the purpose was to connect OCW and OER to the resources in the NSDL library. And I sacrificed a pigeon to the demo gods, so hopefully things will work out. But as von Clausewitz says, no battle plan ever survives. So let's go on. Now OER has undergone a little bit of rebranding. It's now going under folk semantics. So for those of you following along on your laptops, if you go to folksemantic.com. So you can see here, we've done a little bit of a site redesign. You can type in a resource. You'll have your titles. You'll have related, so you can use it utilizing an algorithm. It'll pull related results. You can see we also have metadata for some results, depending on which repository we're pulling from. Once you click on a resource, it will take you to that resource. And here, I'll explain this in a second, but you can see here I made a comment last night, and that comment is made via here. You can sign up and create a profile with OER Recommender. And it works, it's somewhat analogous to Twitter and Facebook in terms of setup and functionality. If I click share, it will post it on my profile and I can add a comment. And these comments stay with the resource. So others who visit this resource via folk semantic will see those comments. That's just beautiful. So here you go. Add a comment.
Spinning wheel of death.
Spinning wheel of death. I should have sacrificed 2 pigeons.
Goat usually.
Yeah, goat. Let me see if I can get the share. So here's the share this link. Share. Hopefully the sharing's going to work. And it's not going to work for me.
It's trying. It's the network.
Well, you know, it's the thought that counts. I should mention a lot of this is kind of in a beta stage. We're working on it. I think our developers' wives are filing for divorce now over the work they put in. So here's the profile page. Just today we've added following and followers. You might have heard those terms from some other website. So you can set up you can follow other people. We're going to look into groups as well. What are you doing right now? That might sound familiar. So we're working on building sort of these people-oriented, allowing people to generate connections through folk semantic. And I think that's all I want to say about that. Other than that, we're continually building this out, and there will be more features. David will get into that on his side of the presentation. Beyond using the folk semantic website, web designer or web administrators also have the ability to embed the recommendations into their web pages. Let me pull up an example of that. So if we go to Utah State's, exclude that for a second. You can see here in the related resources that it draws up using the algorithm resources related to this information theory, OCW. In addition, another way to get results is through a Grease Monkey script. Grease Monkey is a Firefox add-on that allows you to run scripts. And so it's two components. One is you install the Grease Monkey script, and then the second is you install the OER Recommender, and you can get links to both through Folk Semantic's website. So just on the home page it says get these widgets here. Right. So you can get the OER Recommender widget just right down there. There will be links. And what that does for you, you've probably seen this pop up right here. That'll add recommended resources. So based on what you type. So right now these are just generic recommended resources for NSDL as a whole. If we do biology, then you can see it gets more specific, and now it's related to biology here. And as of this morning, I'm pleased to announce that OER Recommender now has real-time analysis of external non-indexed web pages. And you can see here I'm on the UBC homepage, and now you have recommended OER resources that are tied to whatever page. It takes a few seconds. This popped up instantly because I've already been here. But if you go to another page like Amazon.com or something related, it takes a few seconds, but it does pop up. Questions so far? Wow,
Sounds really great.
No. So what you do is, to do this, you would go to folksemantic.com. There's a link that says Get the Widget. So you click on that, and then there will be two links. One's to the Grease Monkey script, the add-on. This is all Grease Monkey's GPL.
Firefox, yeah, and it's all open source.
It's all open source. The OER recommend, and then you install the OER Recommender. You'll see the little monkey right here, and that's how you do it, and it'll just generate it. As I was browsing, I found I needed to turn it off occasionally. That's as easy as clicking the monkey. It turns it off because it started pulling in recommendations for my Gmail, and while I appreciate that, it wasn't what I was in my Gmail for. So that's how you do it. If that doesn't work for you, come up to me afterwards. I'd be happy to walk you through the setup. I'll be here all day, so I'd love to work you through that. So I'm going to pull it back to...
Wait, but before you change,
Yes,
if we're about to train,
we're about to.
because I want to show something
I was going to
else.
put my Sarky slide up. Did you want me to show anything?
Yeah, go to MIT OCW.
Okay.
So the Grease Monkey script right now you can see is making this little floating box up at the top right that's showing resources related to this page.
Did I do bad?
Our network's going up and down.
well, maybe it's not worth taking the time to show. But in this new version, I'm not sure who I'm talking to, someone over here. Was it you? Okay. In the new version for websites that OER Recommender knows about, instead of just floating a little box up in the top right, it'll actually inline it so that it looks like it's part of the page and part of the design. So go to, drop into math and go into linear algebra or something like that.
You can see. Can I search for it?
Just search for linear algebra.
So how much of this code is open source?
All of it.
So,
Yeah, try that.
Just 10 of it open source for?
Should be.
Turn Grease Monkey on.
Oh, you've got Grease Monkey off. Sorry.
Oh.
Click the monkey. Yeah, so now you see here on the left-hand side, under the course home and the syllabus and everything else, the related resources are just running right in place here. And it looks like it's kind of part of the page, and it's recommending other OERs on other sites related to linear algebra.
Could you back up one step and just describe what data sources are feeding the OER resources?
that's great. David, do you have some of the repositories?
Yeah, well, if,
There's
okay,
a list.
there's a list.
Okay.
On folk semantic?
Yeah, it is.
And Coastal's adding to that list all the time, on the lookout for a new repository?
Not only that, but you can add your own repository. If there's a repository that's not there that you think should be there, absolutely, by all means.
So are you using feeds? Or are they RSS feeds of resources? Or are they, okay.
Yeah. RSS feeds is the way it's going to, although it does support OAI PMH also, but the vast majority of them, all the way to the bottom.
Okay.
The vast majority of them are using RSS. So currently indexes 400 collections, 3,000 open courseware courses, and 110,000 resources altogether. So that's a high-level view of what's there. Here's some examples. And if you click this register your resources, it'll just pop up a window that says, what's the name of your repository? Your name, then information about the repository, where the metadata is. You just fill in some stuff here and hit a button, and then a human being looks at it to make sure that it's not open porn resources that you're sharing with the rest of the world. And then it just starts getting indexed and included in the collection.
Let's do you first.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, how does the recommendation algorithm work? So how does it know the properties of the resource you're looking at and therefore what to recommend?
It's an LSA-based algorithm and it runs off the metadata. It doesn't use full text yet. Well, it doesn't use it for these, but obviously when you give it, so in the past you've only been able to get recommendations for things that's already indexed. This new real-time system obviously grabs the text from the page, tries to do something very quick with it that's sort of reasonable, and then give you some OER recommendations.
Have you got any plans to improve the algorithm through some like the social features? So for people to say,
Yeah.
That's what
David
we'll
will get into it, but I should point out that if you, as you're using the folk semantic search engine, it is learning obviously from what you're hitting, and it does keep track of I think time spent on page as part of factoring that into future search results. Stephen, and then over there.
Just very briefly, where is the open source code, in particular recommendations.pjs? Is that in SourceForge or somewhere like that?
It's not. It wouldn't be
It might be Ruby Forge. I can find out. I don't know offhand, but I can certainly. I know the developers. They're not hoarding the source code.
Yeah, there's just if you can't find it, it's not really open.
I understand, Stephen. So I will let you know.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
So at CC Learn, we also have a semantic search prototype, and one of the big challenges we have is we have metadata specs, RDFA specs, for getting people to mark up their works the right way. Are we actually publishing recommendations on markup for RDFA or any semantic information?
We default to yours, as far as licensing goes.
But so as far as like, what about title or I mean, any other semantic information? Do you like publish best practices?
We don't want to go there.
No. Spent too much time doing metadata standards previously. If you're speaking RSS or reasonable OAIP-image, then we're going to get enough of what we want from you.
Right. So,
I was just noting really quickly, I just embedded it in a page and that it pulls a lot from the menu systems around. Could you have it only pull from like the content div when doing the embedded widget recommender?
Yeah, but they're all one-off. You have to write rules for every set of
Gotcha.
pages you want it to.
so I'm now going to turn it over to David, and he'll now he'll explain the future plan for OER Recommender as you know, since Dave Cormier blew our cover yesterday. I'll let him.
That is a good snarky slide. That's nice.
Switch over to the other ones.
No, I embedded them.
Oh, they are embedded? Oh, great. So I didn't need to do what I just did?
Possible to
Yeah.
What was Gurell model?
So a joke while he's changing slides. You know what the difference between a behaviorist and a magician is? If you read my Twitter feed, you've already heard this one, I'm sorry. Difference between a behaviorist and a magician, John? A magician pulls rabbits out of hats, a behaviorist pulls habits out of rats.
Yeah, so we
That's the
should.
joke. Okay.
Should be good.
Thank you. So, and now if you'll let me continue talking after that. So near-term future means by the time the current funding for the project ends. That's the definition of near-term features for folk semantic. I really should present with a can in my hand, I suppose. And these should all make sense if you were looking at what we were doing and thinking ahead to what we might do. So the first is an invite system to get people who are your friends in Facebook or Twitter to let them know, or people in your email account, the same way that you invite people into Facebook or Twitter or other things. The second is to publish into Facebook and into Twitter. So when you find a resource that you like and you share it or you mark it to keep, then that gets pushed out into Facebook and pushed out into Twitter. The ability to create groups so that you can share publicly, but you can also share resources into a particular group inside folk semantic. And then this idea of registering kind of different feeds of what we would call attention metadata. So if folk semantic can look at your blog and see the kinds of things you're linking to, if it can see the things you're bookmarking in Delicious, if it can start to gather up some of the information you create in other places, it can understand a little better what you're interested in and start to personalize recommendations for you. Because right now the recommendations are really 99.99% based on content. Here's some other content I found that's similar to the content you're looking at. As opposed to taking into account any of your interests or any of your history or anything about you to match you to content. Right now it really matches content to content. Go to the next one. Yeah. So once we have that information about you from your bookmarks, from your blog, from things you shared, whatever, then we can do personalized recommendations instead of content-based recommendations. So deep future, which means things that we're seeking additional funding for. The OER Recommender was originally part of a set of 10 tools funded by Mellon called the Folk Semantics. You may remember Send to Wiki or Make a Path or Annotate if you followed that work at the time that we were doing it. But basically, Send to Wiki is a bookmarklet that you install in your toolbar. But when you're looking at an OER, you click that bookmarklet and it takes all the content of that open educational resource and drops it into a wiki so that you can just start editing it and making the changes to it that you want to make. It does some other semi-useful things too, like on the way through, you can first send it to Google Translate and say, actually, I'm trying to translate this into Japanese. Let's let Google Translate have it go at it first. Drop the Japanese into the wiki, and then I'll finish up the translation myself. There's also an alpha feature that never got completely finished, but in some ways I think the most interesting one. It does work generally. As you're passing it through, instead of opting to change it into a different language, you can say, actually, I'm trying to adjust this for someone at 6th grade reading level. And then when it passes through, it'll highlight all the words and mark the sentences that it thinks that the vocabulary is either too tough or the sentence structure is too long or complex for. So it highlights those things for you to support. It doesn't do anything automatic in terms of translating down to another language. It just supports you in translating the language down to be easier for someone to read. So we'd like to get that integrated in. This make a path is just the ability to kind of string a series of sites together. If you've seen something like Trailfire, this is a tool that's very much like Trailfire. And then ratings. This annotate tool is one that would basically let you rate and make comments on any resource anywhere on the web, and it kind of followed you around in the browser. We have that now in the comments. We just don't. That comment bar you saw on the side. Actually, it was kind of hard to see. I'm not sure if it was clear. So when Seth clicked on that resource in annotate and went out to the resource, there's actually a very thin bar across the top, like the big bar or the Twitter bar or something. And that's where the share button and the comment button and some of those other things were. So you're looking at the resource, that the opportunity is up there for you to comment or to share it, and that's where the rating stuff will also go. And it may be that we're still having some internal arguments about this, but we may do more than just a 5-star rating, kind of, yes, this is a resource I want, close the toolbar and leave me alone here, or no, this isn't what I wanted, take me back, and those would give us even stronger indicators of preference for a resource that we could use in recommending things to you later. Yeah, this is the last slide. So a WordPress plugin so that you can do recommendations on your blog. The ability to take content that you've generated inside of Folksomatic and move it out to WordPress. And then one thing in the deep future, it would be really nice if there were some open assessment engines and we could figure out ways to use this tool set to connect OERs to assessments. And that's the end. Questions? Well, actually, no, there's probably not even time for questions. We did them in the middle. Yeah, if you probably need to give it to Mark while he's switching.
You take 1 or 2 questions.
The code's on GitHub, and I'm just tweeting the location.
Thank you.
Why don't you take 1 more question? It'll take 2 seconds to switch.
Okay.
I was curious if you considered outputting data that you gather on your site in some semantic way, like the ratings or something that
Yeah, so each of these tools the first time around when they were built, all of the information that's gathered is available to you as XML, RSS, or RDF. So you can come to Annotate and you can kind of subscribe to a feed of everything about creativecommons.org. Anytime there's a comment or a rating, anything related to that URL, it would just pipe in through the RSS feed, or you could just watch it all kind of flow through.
Dave, you got one over here.
On the UI end, I really like the clean interface. I'm just playing around with it. It's moving along nice. I was wondering.
Have you broken it yet?
I'm trying.
Okay.
but like, did you put a lot of thought into that, and what models did you use to look for?
On the interface side?
Yeah.
No, there's not been near as much work on the interface as there has been on the back end.
Yeah.
Typical.
Yeah. Oh, but no, it's really sweet.
Seth, I may need your.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a graphic designer spend some time on it. Basically, is the answer. But we haven't done like A/B testing or anything like that with that project.
Well, I said it before, wow, and I'm thinking about how do I take this out to the 12,000 faculty that I work with. And have you thought about doing anything like a Common Craft, short little fun video thing that says, here's how you use this, here's why, here's the power of this thing, here's what you're tapping into, that's a minute long or a minute and a half that we can share?
No, haven't actually.
Yeah,
probably a good idea. I think the other thing to say too, the last thing while they're switching over, Seth talked about the widget that you can take and stick in your web page to put recommendations in your website. That widget is one line of JavaScript embed code like you would get from YouTube, the way you'd embed a video. You just take that script, and if you run a whole site, you can embed that one line in your template, and then you'll have recommendations for all the content across your entire site. So like you insert one line into one template, and you have recommendations site-wide a minute later. But we've tried to make it really easy to to use. Hopefully we have.
I think we need
If there's not another question, I'll tell a joke, so we really need another question.
Yeah.
Are you
What
gonna,
license is it?
What license was it?
I'm guessing GPL, but I'll check.
The tools that we do are generally GPL. I'd be surprised if this one isn't, but let us give you a definitive answer.
The source code link.
are you going to be adding other options to the widget, such as how many resources show up on the recommender when it's like embedded in the widget?
I think it already does some of that.
Okay.
I think there are parameters you can pass to it, like if you want to make sure that it doesn't include resources from your own site, or you want it to only, I think you can also ask it to only include resources from your site. But there are 2 or 3 parameters that line of JavaScript takes that you can mess around with.
Are those already listed somewhere or no?
They should all be documented on the site. And if there's stuff that you can't find on folksemantic.com, if you go back to oerrecommender.org, not all the documentation may have been ported over to the new site yet, but it does exist on the old site. Cool.
Yeah, Firefox is open.
I have to apologize a little bit. I've been traveling internationally, and my laptop took a couple of blows in airport security, and it looks like it's knocked the projection piece loose. So I'm switching laptops quickly, and we're ready in just a moment.
Yeah, just go ahead and nuke whatever.
I had this all set up so you wouldn't have to watch any of the sausage making, but that's the way it goes. Just bear with me 1 second.
Better click the monkey there.
Yeah. Once you log in.
Click the monkey, right?
Yeah.
Well, I can, out of context, that may be a problem.
Yeah.
Okay, this will be good enough to get started here. Okay, so I'm Mark Luetzelschwab. I'm from Agilix Corporation. I'm going to talk a little bit about Brain Honey and how we're integrating open education resources into an environment which allows you to utilize these resources in a classroom or an online environment. So we're not focused on creating open education resources, we're consume them. So how can we take the idea that everybody here has put into creating and sharing the resources and make it available in such a way that anybody could really log in, use it, and drag and drop resources that are aligned to learning objectives. Real briefly, Agilix Labs, founded in 2001 in Utah, same core team that built myfamily.com, which was a very interesting social media play where people got online and shared information about their families. So it was a very large project where people got online, shared information, and had both free and licensed content that was available. And it grew to about 16 million users before that, but these guys sold it off and started Agilix. For the last 7 years, we've been building tools for other organizations, including offline clients for learning management systems, learning systems for small and upcoming virtual schools and programs, and have supported millions of students through those products. And in 2009, we released the Brain Honey learning ecosystem. I'll talk a little bit about what that includes, but we're serving virtual schools, K-12 schools, colleges, extreme learning, and the one that got pushed off the bottom there is the personalized learning environments that John Mott had just talked about. So we're really addressing a very broad range of solutions with the technology. And I'll talk a little bit about the ecosystem model. How can we help consume OER in the classroom and virtual learning. I'm not gonna probably have time to talk about the last two. We can talk about those afterward, which is the question is how do private companies work together with open resources and open content? And then also, where are the college standards? And you'll understand that question in a minute. So let me tell you about the ecosystem, how it works. We're launching this right now in 4 different countries: United States, Puerto Rico, Colombia, and Brazil. And we hope to have at least 10 or 11 more countries that we're working in by the time I come back here next year. So our content, instructional services, and enhancements all feed into the core, which is Brain Honey. And then we deploy it out in 3 different ways. We have a free teacher offer, which everybody can log in if you're K-12 public schools. Everything I showed today is free to K-12 schools. We'll add additional people later as far as private schools, colleges, and so forth. Right now it's just based on which databases we have and the effort it takes to add them. We also push them out through OEM and hardware bundles. The reason our CEO isn't here is he's talking about a couple OEM hardware deals that are in the tens of millions of units that are going out worldwide. So what you're seeing here would be broadcast out into very large government deployments. And finally, we push it out through a series of partners and resellers that provide local sales and support. As I mentioned before, the technology that you'll see is supported anywhere from a 1-computer classroom, where you just have 1 teacher, 1 laptop, and they're using the open resources to help supplement their curriculum, all the way to a completely virtual school. So I'm going to show examples of both the 1-computer classroom and the virtual school. And of course, they can be used in the digital school, lab and laptops, the computers on wheels, they call them cows. All those types of environments can be supported. So what are we really going to talk about? We're going to talk about how open resources generate measurable results and how we can bridge that gap. At this conference, we hear a lot about how we share, how we collaborate, how there's a lot of new materials out there, diverse, independence, and so forth. When you talk to a government official, somebody at the Department of Ed, you talk to somebody at the Senate level, what they're talking about, or educators, especially at K-12, student mastery, instructor support, grades, state national standards, and accreditation. So we need to be able to bridge that gap, and that's what I'm hoping to show here today. What are the barriers? Last year, if you were here, we gave out a quick survey, fairly abysmal results as far as return rate, so I can't give you statistical analysis on this, but the returns that we did gave an indication that these were the 5 major barriers to utilizing open resources. One was finding the item, and Seth and company are really working hard on making that a lot easier. The quality, again, the OER Recommender, or folk semantic, I need to call it now, is a good example. And then integration with the learning system and dealing with the fact that it comes from multiple sources. How do you start to integrate those together? And the answer comes from learning objectives, and this is how we take all this material that's being put out there and we push it into a system where you can show measurable results. So there's really two ways that I'm going to show how we can take open resources into a learning system and generate these results. The first is going to be with the resource library, and the concept here is that we look at it as a soup. There's 2 ways of deploying content. It can be pushed out as an individual course that can be replicated, or it can be pushed out as information that can be recombined by the faculty member or even the students. So everything I show here today, I'll show it from a faculty perspective, but you could also think of it as, if I'm a student, I could build my own course using these tools. And I'll show, if I have time, I'll show how to take an open high school course that is being produced by the Open High School of Utah, one of David Wiley's efforts. Log in for free, hit a button, and be able to teach that course online. So without further ado, and again, I didn't sacrifice pigeons either, so. Did you turn the monkey on?
No.
Okay.
And that box up at the top right, too, again.
Okay. So what I'll show you here is the end result of, if you go to brainhoney.com and you log in, if you're not a member of a public K-12 school, you can log in. When it asks you the name of the school, just type Agilix, and it pops up 3 schools. You can do everything I show here if you just search for the school Agilix on the website. And so what I'm going to do is go through the process of creating a new course. And since it knows I'm in Utah, it's already automatically selected the state standards. We have all 50 state standards for the 4 major areas. I select 4th grade science, because that's what I'm going to teach here. And it asks me which objectives I'm going to cover. So typically I'd hit them all, but for the demo I'm just going to focus on the ones about rocks and minerals. And it asks me some basic set of questions I'm going to skip through because I want to get to the good part. I've created a shell. Now I'm going to say I'm going to edit the course syllabus. And the course syllabus has 3 parts. On the left-hand side, it has the objectives. And this is what I've selected, saying these are the objectives I'm going to cover. Now, certainly, I've pulled them from a state database. This could be coming from an internal database. So if your university had a set of objectives, or your consortium, you could pull from those as well. Then I go through here, and I find the ones about rocks. So this one here, I'm going to cover this in week 1. Just drag and drop the objectives onto my schedule here. And I say, oh, I'm going to cover these 3 objectives in our first week of class. And I could do modules and units and so forth. But I don't have any content yet. Right now I've got a blank course. There's nothing there. So what I do is I just click on the objective here, and it goes out and it searches for resources that align to this objective. You can't see it's highlighted here, but you click on it here, it's been highlighted. It goes out and it searches all the resources. So right now it searched through data we have from Pricky. It's got some other data that we have from internally licensed sources, and then some free websites. So then all I need to do, I say, oh, I like this Rocks for Kids sounds good. I'll double click on it to preview it. And I decide, well, that's a pretty good one. So I want to add that to my course. I just drag and drop it on here. And now if I go to preview the course from a student's perspective, this is what you see. So I'm not going to go through the whole process. We can add assignments, assessments, and so forth. But this is a way you can take objectives that you're teaching, align them to your syllabus, click on that objective, and then it searches through repositories to bring the content in. You drag and drop the resources on it, and you have an online course. So what we're looking for is partnerships. We're going to work with Seth. We're going to work with anybody else who's interested in bringing their resources into the system where we can reach into your metadata, bring all the work that you're putting out there, and put it in the hands of millions of teachers. Complete learning system. I won't go through the whole spiel. I'm happy to give demos. There's a nice web a site on brainhack.com or a video that'll talk about the product. But I want to give myself time to show the second piece, which is how do you bring it in from a course perspective. And this is to do a complete course, not just a single resource. So now I'm logging into the high school. And I'll do the same thing, but instead of doing resources, I'm going to do an entire course. So I'm going to teach a course. Create a new course. I'm going to say I'm going to teach 9th grade math. I'm only going to teach algebra. I'll take these 4 major objectives, continue, and what it's done is reached out and said, what complete courses do we know about that align to the algebra standards? And it found 2 shared courses, Algebra 1B and Algebra 1A. I'll click on Algebra 1A, go through the same settings, and is now creating a complete copy of the Open High School algebra course for me to edit, to teach online. I'll look at the syllabus, and here's the entire lose connection again?
No, it looks like it's still.
Oh, there it goes. Here's the complete course. And just like I could before, I can look at all the objectives. Here's the objectives that are being taught. There are resources out there which align to this. I can add those open resources. I can edit this for my own purposes. The students get a complete view of it, embedded content, links, new content, and assessments. It's all baked in. And all I need now to do is add students. So really just a couple clicks and add students. Worked out the test one. But anyway, you'd add the students here in the gradebook or through your student information system. And so really it's a course in a box, utilizing open educational resources, being able to align material by objectives to bring it into utilization, to bring it into the course so you can utilize it. We're making this available free to K-12 teachers right now. We hope to make it available to other markets very, very soon. We just have to make sure we get all the databases in, because the way we make money is that we go to the schools and say, do you want to integrate this with your IT environment? Do you want to integrate this with your student information system? Do you want to customize what it looks like? You can customize the interface. And we sell a membership to the schools where they can do all those things. But it's for individual teachers, it's always free. So that's the shortened version. Open for questions.
Once a course is created, is there an export? Let's say we're using a different LMS and we don't want to teach in this environment. Can we kick it out as a common course cartridge?
We are considering which formats to export to. We will support at least SCORM by the end of the year, early next year. Question?
Is that Canadian K-12 as well as American K-12?
Not right now. We have, what we do, we license these from third parties. So if we can get it from a third party environment, or if you know where they have a resource that has it in a file, we can bring it in. Question?
How many users have you got today?
We just launched this about 3.5 weeks ago. So we've got about 1,000 teachers that have signed up. And in the system itself, because we're running for other people as well, the core technology has had about 500,000 enrollments in the last 18 months. I expect that we have some deals on the table which would give us in the millions of users.
Where'd John Mark go? Okay, I think we're done.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Can I say one more thing before we quit? So as Mark mentioned, this is the platform that the Open High School of Utah is using. And the thing that's most interesting about this platform from my perspective is when the assessments are connected to the objectives and the objectives are connected to the content, there's a lot of data that's captured, and we can go in and mine that data. And we can use student performance on the assessments and student time spent on content and mine that out in such a way that we can figure out which content is the worst performing content. And then because the content are all open educational resources, we can actually improve the content that is performing the least effectively. And we think that over a couple of cycles, over a couple semesters, we'll go from having a decent quality content to having one of the best quality sets of courses around as the data drive the improvements of the course.
Would the results of those assessments be released, like the raw data? Like the assessments of the content, not the assessments.
Oh, of the content? Oh, yeah, sure, we'd be happy to share that.
And would you share it as well, like some sort of XML or something like that? Something in different instances of the same sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't know. We've got a master's thesis starting up right now, looking at creating this the algorithm to do all the data mining. So it's in flux what it's going to look like. I know it'll be a prioritized list,
right?
But specifically how it looks, I don't know.